Hi, I'm Lucas,
And I'm Brian.
and this is the Quacks Podcast.
So how was the concert?
Concert was good.
Who was it again?
The National at Comerica. They've been around for maybe 20 years, but kind of a fringe independent band, very mellow.
What kind of music do they do?
Mellow independent, but kind of with an 80s flair to it, kind of. It's hard to describe, but they're actually really good, but they had a show in LA the previous night, and he went all out for the LA show, you can tell, because he didn't have much left in the tank. Throat-wise or energy-wise, it seemed like he was kind of struggling. But always great to see a live band like that.
Yeah, it is fun. Get your juices going.
That's it. All of them, man. And then I saw a ska band last week, which was great. So bands, I'm seeing them again.
Feels good?
Yeah, it feels really good. I love live concerts.
Yeah.
All that energy, free energy.
I know, man. I remember seeing, in college, I was into My Chemical Romance.
Oh, yeah.
And I went and saw them live. And it was just like the best ever. I just came back so pumped. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And
Totally.
Yeah.
Concerts can make or break it. There's so many bands, too, that like I'd never heard of before I'd seen them and like, oh, I'll go with these friends. They're really into this band. And then just fall in love with the band based on their live performance. Whereas if I'd heard just a recording, I'd probably be like, But the whole experience is what brings you back. And that auditory, visual, physical, emotional ride that you're on, which you can only get in a concert.
Yeah.
So anyways, buy your tickets at Live Nation, and there's gonna be a link in the bio.
There will not.
There will not be.
No.
What's up with you, dude?
Nothing much, dude. It's actually funny we're talking about music because today we're going to talk about dopamine.
I love it.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to this episode because it's branching a little outside of what we've been talking about, kind of getting into like more life stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, let's do it.
Let's get into it.
So dopamine, it's an amine. It's used throughout your body. It kind of acts like both a neurotransmitter and a hormone. And I think it's important to cover because it's basically central to understanding our modern times and the challenges we face to be healthy and happy. I'm obviously really big into explaining things, especially to myself, if you haven't noticed. And so when I learned about dopamine, it just made so many puzzle pieces about the world like make sense and fit together.
I love this.
So yeah, I think if there's any episode that's going to apply to everybody, it's probably going to be this one.
Yeah, we all have it, right?
Yes.
We all want it.
All want it. More.
More.
You could almost say that's dopamine's tagline, more. So let's dive in. So dopamine, as I said, it's an amine. A lot of people will call it a hormone, but it's actually not quite true. It doesn't have a hormone structure chemically, but it kind of acts like a hormone in many places in the body.
Okay.
Now, in your body, different tissues, they create dopamine locally. They use it in some different way. The vast majority of dopamine is created in the brain in a spot called the substantia nigra, and it's also made in the kidneys.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know where dopamine was made.
Yeah, the substantia nigra is like this little almond-shaped thing in your brain, I guess. So a lot of the different things it does in blood vessels, it will inhibit norepinephrine, which is like adrenaline, which means it's kind of a vasodilator. In the kidneys, it increases sodium excretion and urine output. In the pancreas, it reduces insulin production. In the digestive system, it reduces gastrointestinal motility, protects intestinal mucosa. Anyway, it just does a lot of different things.
Sounds like it's a slowing agent almost. You're like, well, it suppresses this or does that, and it seems like that's how it works overall in your body.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because certain neurotransmitters are what you would say inhibitory and some are excitatory, and dopamine can be both.
Okay.
So in your gut, yeah, it's like slowing your gut motility down. It's like a relaxing thing in there. But in other places, it's kind of like an upper. So it just depends on where it's at.
Okay.
No, anyway, that's all interesting, obviously. But the real McCoy that we want to know about is what does dopamine do in your brain? Now, there are a lot of different dopamine receptors in your brain. There's a lot of nuance, and we're just not even going to go over that. All right? We're not going to go through D1 through 5 and all the different stuff. So for simplicity's sake, what dopamine does in your brain is it increases your perception of a future reward or suffering.
Interesting.
All right. So this is important because many publications and news outlets, they're going to confuse what dopamine does. They're going to say it's the pleasure hormone. They're going to say it makes you feel good when you do something. Dopamine is what you feel when you can see in the future a reward coming towards you.
Whoa.
So it's almost like hope a little bit. That's what dopamine really is. It's like hope.
Right.
It's not the actual satisfaction you feel at getting something you want. So
it's the promise.
it's the promise. Yeah. Dopamine is basically what propels you towards satisfaction and away from suffering. But the actual satisfaction you feel at, good foods, good sex, or, all the other pleasurable human things.
Right.
That's actually a mix of other brain chemicals like oxytocin or endorphins, maybe serotonin. But that's not, those other things aren't, those things actually inhibit dopamine. They actually bring it down.
Really?
Yeah. So it's important to kind of get that distinction that dopamine is not satisfying.
Okay.
It's like propelling. Now, dopamine is pleasurable. It's the pleasure you feel from really good music. It's the anticipation of really good food. Dopamine it helps you focus. So it's the focus you feel when you see something novel, like maybe a sunset or a movie with a plot that surprises you.
Okay.
Something sexual you've never seen or done before.
Very interesting.
It can, so a lot of things can raise dopamine, intense exercise, caffeine, alcohol consumption, massage, getting sunlight. When you do those, when you accomplish smaller tasks like to-do lists, those raise your dopamine.
Right.
So basically think of it as like a small lead up and then satisfaction you may feel after accomplishing a to-do list item, or if you've been having some drinks and you get that feeling after like 3 drinks where you want another and another, that's dopamine.
Yeah, I know that one all too well, which is why I don't touch. I abstain. But no, that's funny because I was going to actually bring that up. I was going to say the promise of something that before I quit drugs and alcohol, something that reminded me of how you were describing it is before I even consume, say I would purchase alcohol knowing that I was going to get buzzed, or I would start feeling the effects beforehand, just in anticipation of the act itself. I would taste it. And
wow.
Yeah, so that was, I wonder how that plays into it, but that reminded me of how you were describing dopamine.
Totally.
It's not the thing itself, but it's a promise of what's to come.
Yeah, and then when you actually do the thing itself, sometimes that's not that great.
No.
Sometimes it's like, this is all right.
Right.
All the pleasure was in the lead up.
Totally. It's the journey, not the destination.
There
right?
you go. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
It is really interesting. And that dopamine feeling, that's hope. That's like meaning in life. That's like what gives your life meaning. I'm going in a direction, that's that feeling. That's what everybody wants. They want the feeling of meaning in their life.
Completely.
And that's why drugs can be so addictive. Yeah. And now that's where most people probably know dopamine from, is they've heard about it with like cocaine or meth or nicotine or,
right.
That's where they've heard of dopamine. And all of these, they increase concentrations of dopamine in your brain, like massively.
Really?
Super spike dopamine. The other one people have probably heard of is amphetamines for like ADHD kids. Super spikes in dopamine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
You gonna add something?
no, I was just going to say that I never even think of the term dope as something being dope is good, as positive. Oh, that's so dope. That's obviously a derivative of dopamine. What else would that have been taken from?
Yeah, I don't know. That might
You're
be true.
a dope. Meaning dopamine, I would think.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Well, I'll dig in more.
All right. Check out, what's that website which says all the wacky phrases and where they come from?
Yeah, well, whatever I find, it'll be in the bio. No.
So, all right. So anyway,
dopamine,
it's increasing our perception and propulsion towards rewarding things. Now, if you've ever taken any of these drugs, you kind of have a good idea of what dopamine feels like, but I just want to expand on that more. It feels like whatever you're doing at this moment is incredibly meaningful, meaning you have hope, you have aliveness, you have focus, you're motivated to do what you need to do in order to get the reward that you're anticipating.
Interesting.
If you have too little dopamine, it's the opposite. So you're depressed, you're unmotivated, you're sluggish, You might have something called anhedonia, which means you basically have the reduced ability or simply you cannot feel pleasure.
Oh my Lord.
You might be nihilistic. You might see very little meaning in life. And there's actually special mice who are bred for scientific experiments to have very little dopamine in their brains. And they're so unmotivated, they don't even feed themselves. So you can put food in their mouth and they'll chew it up and be happy. They'll look like satisfied,
Yeah.
you know, whatever a mouse looks like, satisfied. But if the food is across the cage, they won't get up to go get it, and eventually they starve to death.
What?
Yeah, so it's really what the motivating thing.
That's so unbelievable. That's crazy.
Yeah. So to give you a better idea about dopamine, I'm going to share a personal experiment I did with a dopamine agonist about 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this is going to be fun. So before that, I need to explain something about dopamine and serotonin. They kind of have this relationship like a seesaw. As one goes up, the other goes down, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So to simplify things, dopamine, it opens up your perception and your focus, and serotonin closes down your perception and focus. And so this is why artistic people, they tend to have higher levels of dopamine in their brain. They are more perceptive. You know, they can connect things through their art that you wouldn't perhaps normally see.
Right.
And then the extreme form of that would be like schizophrenia, which have very high levels of dopamine in their brain, which are connecting things that...
That's an excess of dopamine, really.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that they're connecting things that have no connection at all. So basically, if you can think about it like an aperture of a camera, serotonin closes that aperture and dopamine opens that aperture. Or like a hose.
Okay.
Serotonin's going to close off the hose, dopamine's going to open the hose up
Okay.
to have water flow. So back when they discovered LSD, they found that LSD was a dopamine receptor agonist, meaning that it increases dopamine in your brain. Now, there are a lot of diseases such as Parkinson's, which have low dopamine symptoms. So some of the pharmaceutical companies got this idea that they were going to take LSD and chemically alter it in ways that would make new drugs, but without, you know, some of LSD's hallucinogenic effects. This was like the 1970s. So they succeeded. They made a lot of different drugs that alter dopamine in your brain in different ways. And so a few years ago, I thought, I want to try one of these dopamine agonists. I didn't want to do LSD because I didn't want to trip out or anything.
Yeah.
I just wanted to feel what it was like to have a lot of dopamine in my brain.
Yeah.
So
I did enough of that for both of us.
I also figured like these drugs, they're prescribed to Parkinson's patients all the time, so taking it once or twice would probably not be that dangerous.
Yeah.
So I got my hands on one of these as a research chemical.
Wow.
And decided to try it out.
Which one did you get?
I don't know if I want to say the name.
Okay.
You know, if you're interested, you can message me. Or there's about, I think, 12 dopamine agonists that they made back in the 70s, and there's one that does not cause fibrosis of the heart muscle. That's the one I tried.
There's only one that has that?
Yeah. All the other ones, they inhibited serotonin too much in your heart muscle or something like that. And so they caused arterial fibrosis or something.
Gosh.
I know. There was some wicked side effects.
All in
with
the
these
name of
things.
science, brother. You did it.
I did it. But there was one that didn't, and that's the one I tried.
I know. What happened?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you. So I remember taking it, right? And for the first couple hours, I was really tired. Time seemed to slow down.
Was it just like, how did you take it? Walk me through this.
So it came in a dropper bottle.
Okay.
And so I took, I want to say, it was in micrograms. I took 3 drops, you know?
That's it?
That's it. I didn't
Okay.
take much. I was not taking, like, I started slow. I took it 3 drops the first week, and then a week later I tried 6 drops out just to kind of compare them.
Right.
So I took it, and I got super tired for the first hour, but the crazy thing was time kind of slowed down. So I felt like I'd been laying down the whole day, but it was really only an hour. And so I got up and I felt super rested. I became energetic. I started going about my day. And what I found was like my focus and awareness of my environment around me were super high. So everything felt like it was moving slower than normal.
Like the Matrix.
Yeah, like I went out, I had conversations with people, and I had just this massive amount of awareness of all the things going on while I was conversing with people. So I could take people's words that they had said, like rearrange them in my head, think up a couple jokes, pick the funniest one, and then say the joke all in the time after they had stopped speaking.
Whoa.
I mean, it was really trippy.
Because
And
that's my number one thing is like you think about afterwards, I should have said that.
Yeah. You could think about it during on this thing. Now, I didn't feel like my brain was on overdrive or anything. Like
Right.
it wasn't like caffeine where you're just like, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
What I felt was that everything else had slowed down. So I had all the time in the world to consider and adapt, and I could think of all the different factors and put them together and come to a conclusion. And any anxiety I felt was totally gone. I almost felt a bit godlike. I mean, it's weird. It's like I had this awareness and this ability to solve any problem, analyze any situation. It was like kind of like the universe was my oyster.
Really?
I could really handle anything that came my way. And if I made a mistake or something, it was no big deal. I could simply, reanalyze the components of the decision, figure out what was wrong, change it. So mistakes held no fear for me. They could easily be remedied. I just had this feeling of total mastery.
It's like Limitless, that movie.
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, as the day went on, the feeling slowly ebbed away, and I kind of got this dull frustration feeling. So, I mean, it didn't last long.
How long?
I mean, a day. I mean, probably 8 hours. I
But
had
for
this
3
feeling.
drops, that's pretty impressive.
It was pretty good. Yeah. And I did have some effects as the week went on. So the main feeling was about 8 hours, but then for the next week, I had these effects. Now,
What, they would just ebb and flow?
well, I'll tell you about them because the effects were not the same as the first one. So if you remember, I mentioned earlier that some of the other brain chemicals like oxytocin, endorphin, serotonin, those all inhibit dopamine. So what's naturally supposed to happen is dopamine, it feels good and it motivates you towards more of what feels good.
Right.
And then when you get to the goal you're going towards, you get the payoff of these other brain chemicals, which kind of give you this relaxed, satisfied feeling.
Okay.
Well, on this dopamine agonist drug, my dopamine was boosted and the satisfaction chemicals were pushed lower artificially. So over the next week or so, my dopamine stayed elevated. And so I had this basically constant feeling of needing more. Now,
Of needing more?
yeah, of just wanting more.
Really?
Like I was curious, I was focused, I was, constantly looking for new experiences, but everything I did, nothing was satisfying. So I had to keep doing whatever I was doing. If I was playing golf, I needed more golf. Like
Right.
if it was food, I needed more food. If it was video games, I needed more video games. If it was an interesting idea that I was thinking about, I needed to think about it more.
Really?
It was just more.
But you never at any point were you like, I need more of this dopamine.
No,
or
not so
whatever?
much. That I was pretty disciplined in that I'm like, I'm only trying this. We're gonna, twice or
Right.
whatever. So I didn't think to do. I wasn't wanting that. I was wanting all the other things
Okay.
in life that were somewhat, pleasurable.
Pleasurable.
Yeah.
Jinx, owe me a Coke.
And I actually looked up some of the side effects on some Parkinson's drugs, and a lot of those drugs, one of the side effects is a development of a gambling addiction or another addiction. And it's this facet is that,
That is so weird.
yeah, it's kind of trippy.
Do you still have some of this stuff? So what happened the second time? You took 6 drops.
I took 6 drops. So, yeah. The second time was just pretty much like the first. I wasn't as sleepy for the first 2 hours. I didn't
Yeah.
get that fatigue. I was basically good to go right away.
Yeah.
And it was just, I don't know, it was the same, one of the coolest thing was I noticed some like really amazing changes in the mirror. So my jawline became tighter, my eyebrows got thicker, my stomach kind of got flatter too.
Just as perception wise, or you actually felt like these things were happening?
These things actually happened.
Wow.
And so dopamine actually will increase your metabolism and it makes you younger. Now, you probably will recognize this feature of dopamine in a saying, and that's, thrown around in our culture, and that's that people will live longer when they have a purpose in life.
Yes.
Right? Have you heard that?
A dog with a job will live longer than a dog without.
Exactly. Or you've heard of the old man who, dies a few months after he retires.
Which is ridiculous to me. I can't wrap my head around any of those idiots, but yes, I've heard it.
Yeah, so this is the aspect
idiots, sorry.
idiots. This is an aspect of dopamine. It keeps you young, and when you live a life full of meaning and hope, you stay younger and healthier longer, and that's what dopamine does.
Oh,
So that was a really cool kick.
I like this new body hacking that you're getting into, experimenting the things that we talk about, and that really kicks it up for me. I have more stake in the game, and obviously now I want to try this as well.
Yeah.
But that's awesome, dude. That's so crazy.
I know. So the bottle I sent it to a friend who was going through some rough times, and I'm like, just do this, dude. It'll get you back on track. And I said, but it was like $60. So I'm like, so send it back to me, and he never sent it back to me. So
Oh,
I don't know
man.
what,
I wanted to try that.
I could show you where to get some if
Okay.
you want some. So thankfully, that feeling I had of needing more and more, that wore off after about a week.
Okay.
But I do remember to this day that time and that subsequent week very well. And this is another feature of dopamine where when your brain has high amounts of it, your memory is much better. And the things you do that are rewarding, it almost like lays down deep grooves of experience in your brain. Wow. So in other words, the things that are in your life that are really meaningful, your brain is not going to let you forget them. It's going to make sure that it lays down those tracks so that you super remember those rewarding experiences.
That's incredible to me, man.
And in fact, the other cool thing is you will get those same pleasurable and meaningful feelings, almost like an echo, if you then do those things again at some point in the future.
Wow.
So dopamine is really how your brain says, this activity you're doing is leading towards a reward, do more of it. And then in the future, if you can do that activity again, do more of it again.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a training chemical.
And so this is why you kind of want to be very careful about what types of things you do. If you're on a substance that raises dopamine or you're doing activities that are highly dopaminergic, you're laying down the tracks of what you're going to feel pleasurable about in the future for yourself. And this is why sexual abuse on children who have brand spanking new dopamine receptors all ready to be programmed is so heinous. How do you say that word? Heinous. Yeah, it's so terrible. It can literally program their brains to find something very depraved as pleasurable and rewarding.
Oh, man.
And so you really got to be careful when you're doing dopamine agonists or doing things that are highly pleasurable like that.
Yeah, that makes total sense, man. I'm so interested in this now, too, especially with the fact that dopamine is such an important part of just wanting to stay on the planet and keep interested, it sounds like.
Totally. Yeah, you're totally right. So just to sum it up, dopamine, it feels like hope, feels like pleasure. It increases focus, motivation, and drive. It lowers anxiety. It alleviates depression. At high levels, it can slow time down. It can make you feel euphoric. It can give you feelings of grandiosity. It can be incredibly addictive because of these qualities. And it also lays down deep tracks in our mind to trigger future seeking of the same rewards. And it can also enhance your metabolism and keep you young.
Wow.
Yeah.
All pluses.
All pluses. So what do we do with this? Well, the thing about dopamine is it's not all pluses. It's a double-edged sword.
It always is.
It always is.
Welcome to Quacks.
Well, if dopamine was just good all the time,
Everybody would
we
be
would just do
doing
cocaine every day, right?
Right.
And just be leading our best life.
That's funny, dude, because the parallels of how you're describing cocaine or describing dopamine, that literally 3 different times during the course of the conversation, I was like, he's basically describing cocaine.
Right?
If memory serves, but it also laid down some grooves for me, not all good. But that's so funny that because I think that's probably cocaine's key strength is that it boosts your dopamine to these, here's your word, heinous levels or amazing levels, depending on what side you're looking at it. But that's how I felt. Like what you were describing was like, that's how you were describing the cocaine addiction.
Well, and what was the come down like?
Brutal,
right?
Brutal. Because that's why you don't want, you're like, ooh, I don't want to come down. Let me take more.
Yeah.
You know, not good. Depressed, all the things you were describing. It sounded like you were describing cocaine to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So dopamine, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. Some of the things you take, like pregnenolone, that's a hormone. If you take that, your body makes more of it even on top of what you take. So that's like an interesting relationship where you can get your body to make more of something by taking something.
Yeah.
Dopamine is the total opposite. The more you get, the less you make and the less effective it is.
Right.
And the higher the spike in dopamine, the higher the spike in the dopamine hangover afterwards.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So dopamine, it's like the quintessential gift of the gods that you have to pay for.
Right.
It's like the piper must be paid, what goes up must come down, no free lunch, all those sayings.
Yeah.
It's like that's what dopamine's all about.
It's chemical karma.
Yes.
Okay.
Indeed. And like the come down you were talking about, depression, anxiety, sleeplessness, paranoia, I mean, it's bad.
Yeah.
You know, when you come down off of these huge spikes in dopamine, it's really bad. And that's an extreme example, but it can be used to show the downsides of large amounts of dopamine, and it can tell us how to optimize our life so that dopamine is our friend and not our enemy. Because what you want is a meaningful life, which is a life full of dopamine.
Right.
That's what everybody wants.
Exactly.
Yeah. So really, to pull all this together, we need the last piece of the puzzle, and that is that boredom, listlessness, fatigue, and depression, they all renew your dopamine receptors in your brain.
Boredom renews it.
They renew. Basically, it's not strictly scientific, but for our understanding, boredom is the fuel for future dopamine fires, if that makes sense.
I don't fully understand.
So boredom is uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good, but it primes your brain to feel good and find something meaningful.
Gotcha.
So it's the corollary. So basically, you can think of a little, weighing scale, dopamine and boredom. They kind of, if you want dopamine to be high, you're eventually going to have boredom be high.
Exactly.
All
okay.
right. Makes
I get
sense.
it now.
Okay. So the way to optimize dopamine is two-pronged. It involves pursuing meaningful activities that pay off in the long term while avoiding activities that have, I don't know, what you would call like empty meaning, which means they feel meaningful while you're doing them. You know, the cocaine, it feels really meaningful while you're doing it.
Right.
But later on, you know, when you look back at what you have, you're empty-handed.
Totally.
You know, you don't have anything really to show for it.
There was no substance.
No substance. Yeah, so you want to focus and you want to drive that dopamine that brings you want to feel that, but you want to have it pay off in real ways so that when a dopamine hangover comes later, when you kind of get the come down, you're satisfied by the shape that your life has taken.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah. You also don't want to spike your dopamine too high because that will eventually lead to just intense boredom, depression. You just want that slow burn so that you're driven and motivated, but not euphoric.
What kind of, are there specific foods that we can eat that will help bolster dopamine levels in the body?
There are, and we'll talk a little bit about those at the end.
Okay.
But I think the best approach to this dopamine stuff is lifestyle related. And you want to kind of avoid the chemical alterations unless it's in very small ways.
Okay.
Yeah. So for example, let's talk about phone games. As far as things that aren't rewarding, those are basically designed to spike your dopamine. They give you little small rewards. You work towards them, and then you get a little prize.
Yeah.
And then it gives you a new quest with a little slightly bigger prize, right?
Yep.
And so you get into this cycle where you can throw hours and hours into these little games, and it feels like what you're doing is something meaningful. But at the end of the day, it's just like internet points, right?
Yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah. I actually got hooked into this when I was a teenager with EverQuest. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it. I've never played it.
It was the same thing. It's a game where you get into it and you do quests and you build up your character and your equipment and you just I threw months of my life into this.
It's an
thing.
RPG, yeah.
MMORPG. But at the end of the day, I mean, I had some good experiences. I met some people, but at the end of the day, it's like I didn't have any payoff
Totally
for the time I put into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no personal relationship that you can have that goes outside of that arena that you're playing at. It doesn't come with you when you leave. You know what I mean? You don't log off and get to hold on to this magical experience that you had because it wasn't tangible.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of relationships, another good example is mostly for men, but women too, pornography. That is a super dopamine booster.
Yeah.
And it's like the male mind is so set up to pursue women instinctually.
Yeah.
Pornography is like the ultimate payoff. But again,
Makes sense.
it's a screen. There's no actual woman. There's no family that you get to make. There's
Right.
no kids. There's no grandkids.
Totally.
There's no payoff whatsoever. It's just a dopamine boost with an empty prize.
And it's like, it's sneaky too, because the experience of pornography is like a little bit interested, somewhat interested, more interested, very, very interested, extremely interested, and then not interested at all. Just encapsulate.
Yep. And at the end, you're just this burnt out husk of the man you were at the
of
start.
shame and dopamine.
Hangover. Yeah. Well, you could probably lump one night stands into that as well. Maybe not quite as empty as
Yeah, because there's some
pornography.
physical contact there, but at the end of the day, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a handshake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another example is food. We actually talked about this a bit with the weight loss episodes, if you remember. There's incredibly good tasting foods out there that will spike your dopamine, but the nutrition that our minds associate with really good tasting food is not there. It's just chemical taste enhancers.
Yeah.
So it's just empty. It's not good nutrition.
Right.
So again, just you get a boost of dopamine for no real payoff.
Yeah.
And there are many other things, really. We could keep talking that are empty dopamine boosters. Our whole society is chock full of empty dopamine boosters. I mean, and we are coming up with new ones all the time.
I'm sure that's basically at the tip of every marketing person's mouth, brain piece, anything. I mean, they're looking for ways to boost our dopamine and keep us.
Yeah, they're all a little bit like drug dealers.
Oh, those sons of bees.
Now, on the other hand, the activities that boost our dopamine in healthy ways, those have been around forever. Those have been around for thousands of years. They've been written about in literature. They're like, having and spending time with family and friends, cooking good food and eating it, having a drink or two with good company, playing games communally, sports where you build relationships, you get to know yourself and others better.
Right.
Like all of those boost dopamine in long-term ways that don't have that empty-handed fall off. Now, the sexes are also a bit different with how they use dopamine, what they find rewarding, which, kind of makes sense given our traditional, how our traditional roles from way back in the day, thousands of years ago.
Right.
So men, they have a very distinct kind of like hunter brain where they become very goal oriented. They seek to tackle like one goal.
Yes.
Think of like the spear on the elephant. They're like, that's what they're getting, the elephant.
Yeah.
And in fact, testosterone, it increases dopamine and vice versa. So I know it's a bit of a stereotype, but you've kind of heard men are able to super focus on one thing while women are better at multitasking. Have you ever heard that?
I believe I've heard that once or twice.
Yeah. Well, that's because of this relationship between testosterone and dopamine.
Okay.
In that men generally have higher levels of dopamine in their brain, and so they're more able to focus like
Will
that.
women use up all of their dopamine and then use all of your dopamine?
They'll take half
as well. Well, actually, no, they use your dopamine first. And then if they have to tap into their own, that's terrible. It's just science though, guys.
Totally. But for men, you don't really want your hunter brain to be stuck on something that has really no true payoff.
Right.
You don't want to do the video games and the porn and stuff because that's activating your little hunter brain. You're going out and you're getting it, but you want real life work.
Looks like I'm gonna have to find some new interests.
Dude, you're hilarious.
I'm joking, of course, but I totally understand what you're saying because I know I was a big video gamer for a long time, and I would find myself being like, I got to get to that video, I got to get back there, I got to get to this game, especially MMO where you're playing with other people and getting in there and then being like, oh, I got this new outfit and all this stuff, and then like turning it off and being like, feeling so empty and being like, there was nothing. Why was I so excited to go do that?
Yeah.
There's nothing to it.
Yeah. It's really meant to be like you have that feeling and then you get a gazelle and you bring it back to the tribe and you get to feed everybody and everybody's happy and everybody gets to dance and sing and do all that stuff because you brought back a gazelle.
Like Tom Brady did to his... Oh, that's Giselle. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were all
right?
happy though, too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, that's awesome, man. That's so cool because I know that this is something that's coursing through our systems if we're lucky enough and it's keeping us in the game.
Yeah.
And I love that.
So like I said, for women, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
All right. They're more nurturing. They have more emotion. And I'm kind of talking some stereotypes here. There's obviously masculine women, feminine men. We're talking statistics, bell curve stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So for women in general, they're more social. They're more emotional, nurturing. So you can get your fill of that from TV shows, movies, magazines, which are empty, or you can get your fill from family, children, siblings, parents, close friends, that kind of thing. Basically, the general pattern for both men and women is that you get your feel-goods from real things, not from entertainment or stand-ins that mimic those things. Your brain, it's healthy or not as a reflection of the environment around you. So getting that environment aligned with long-term meaning, it's going to keep the dopamine at good levels without it getting too high or too low.
Okay.
And what I find really challenging about all this is that humanity has scientifically reached a point where we can artificially trigger all of our ancient dopamine brain triggers artificially. right?
Yeah.
Like we are advanced to the point where we can make anything feel meaningful for a certain amount of time.
It's scary.
And the best example, I think, well, a great example is school children with ADHD. And it's mostly boys, but girls too. So kids, they go into school, they find it boring. They don't understand why they have to memorize all these facts or why they need to know all this math or whatever.
I don't either.
And they can't focus on what's being taught to them. Now, instead of saying, hey, maybe here, there's something wrong with the school system, or maybe it's not interesting enough, or, maybe there isn't enough exercise. I don't know, whatever it is, we blame the kids. We say, you have ADD, and then we prescribe them amphetamines. Now, amphetamines are a dopamine reuptake inhibitor. So their brains, they get the dopamine juice, and all of a sudden these kids' minds are telling them like, hey, learning about geometry theorems, it's super meaningful. Focus, focus, focus. This is the most important thing that you have to study.
Wow.
The problem is we're just like artificially adding meaning,
Yeah.
Instead of like trying to adapt the system to take advantage of how kids are wired, if that kid who has ADHD and given Adderall, if they grow up to be a fireman, like all those years of algebra and geometry, it's just a waste.
Yeah.
It's a total waste. And they're going to have to pay for it with the side effects of those drugs. And then their whole reward system and their brain is all messed up for the rest of their life. It's just a terrible thing to do.
That's not good.
Yeah. So just to wrap this all up, my rule of thumb is try and stay as natural as possible in what boosts dopamine. So I know we've covered these, but like reading good books, creative writing, cooking good food, being with other like-minded people, having meaningful, truthful conversations, like we could go on and on, but these have been human activities for a long, long time. So participating in them, you're probably going to be okay long term. Now, we can't be sure about the new stuff. So, like, let's take an example. So you put on a VR headset and you're running through like a post-apocalyptic world with scantily clad people as you gun down zombies and aliens. Yeah, right? I mean, that might be okay once or twice, but like those kinds of novel experiences raise the bar for entertainment in your life so high that after years of that, you end up bored all the time,
right?
Because your dopamine receptors are just burnt out, and
that's crazy.
Yeah,
and sad.
Yeah, I think every once in a while we should dive into like brain chemicals like this.
Dude, all the time. I love it.
Yeah, because it's one thing, when we talk about herbs or vitamins to be like, oh, this herb raises dopamine or lowers dopamine. But if you kind of know what it's like on an experiential level, when you can like, oh, I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
Then you can get a much better idea of what we're talking about.
Man, whatever you want to experiment with next, I'm on board. Just save me some next time.
Yeah. So for anyone who thinks like, hey, I want to try some of these dopamine uppers, this stuff sounds great. I just advise be a little cautious.
Of course, after you were just saying that there's only one that you found that didn't cause like cardiac fibrosis or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even talking about those ones. I mean, there's much lighter ones. Like that's a pharmaceutical one, but some herbs will do it. Ashwagandha will raise dopamine a little bit. Vitamin B6 is a great one to raise dopamine a little bit. And you can just take little amounts throughout the day and it'll kind of keep those dopamine levels at a little bit higher of a level. Okay. And it won't have such like a bad, come down or whatever.
Right.
So there's a lot of things out there that raise dopamine. The big ones are mucuna and velvet bean. Those are two beans that have L-dopa in it, and that's a precursor to dopamine. Okay. So if you really want to try it, you can try those. But again, you're getting into having the kickback on those. You're going to be desensitizing your dopamine receptors. The slide, yeah. So anyway, that's
dude,
what
I love
got.
It. So dopamine. I'm going to get into this, and I'm definitely going to be getting some of that because I want to try that out. I want to try something.
Really?
Of course. I didn't hear too many bad things that you were saying about it. I mean,
the bad thing about it is,
I don't want to try it as an ongoing thing, but I'd like to try it once.
See what it feels like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe it resets you. Who knows?
And that's part of why I got into it is I read, LSD can basically reset your brain if you have PTSD or something like that. If you have something stress stuck, you can take one of these dopamine agonists and it will kind of reset you a little bit.
Right.
And so that's part of why I did it.
To a carrot. I'm a carrot.
Well, that's kind of why I did it, and I thought, well, I don't want to do LSD. I don't want to, get myself high, or I didn't want to trip out. You know, you don't want to have your experience ruined by. I wanted to be able to work and
it's scientific
to have an experience in my life that was not, abnormal. But the downside of that stuff, like I described it, it sounds great, but if I were to keep taking it, I would become addicted to something because I mentioned it lowers those other brain chemicals, the serotonin, the oxytocin, the endorphins. So it makes it so you aren't satisfied with anything.
Right.
So, I mean, those couple weeks after I tried it once one week and once the next week, the week after I tried it, man, I was like an addict. I was into whatever I was into.
Maybe it's something I don't want. I mean, I did want to try it just to be able to try, but the way you say that with an addictive brain that I already have, I'm thinking it would be beneficial and therapeutic for me, but it could also swing the other way.
It could. It's basically going to just tell your mind, seek something out that's pleasurable and meaningful, and that's going to be the good food, the good sex, the good the hunter brain, whatever that is going to be. You're going to go after it,
right?
And so it's good to experience, but it definitely could be bad. And if I were to take that drug continually for a couple years, I would just burn out my dopamine receptors completely. I would basically become just a depressed, bored husk of a person who just didn't find much interest in life. I would be nihilistic. So you really want to keep your dopamine levels just at just a slow burn. You don't want a big spike.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Other than trying it, here or there.
Right.
I mean, one use I find of it is I'll take herbs that boost testosterone. That boosts dopamine too. Any herb that boosts testosterone will boost dopamine. I'll take something if I have a business trip or if I have a few days of meetings that I really want to be like super focused on. So I mean, there's uses for it. It's just, it's more of a lifestyle thing.
Yeah, definitely, man. Cool.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
Dude, I'm completely enthralled. I want to find out more about dopamine now.
Yeah.
But that's so cool. I guess I don't need to find out that much more. We just covered the entire spectrum. Just go back and listen to this again.
Yeah, I mean, does it make you think of like, oh, I should change my life in this way or that way? Or I mean, does it make you think of that at all? Or
no, but it definitely makes me question what the meaningful aspects of my life are. And maybe I can take a closer look at that without needing an outside source in order to fully appreciate what it is that I have and what I am able to experience on a daily basis, whether it's good food, good friends, or my daughter, so.
Yeah.
But no, it's just it's a nice little reminder of all the different things that happen in our body to keep us going.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you, man.
Yeah, no problem. So if you like this, we need some help. Share it with people. If you got some use out of this, that's really the hardest part about this podcast is getting it out there and getting people new listeners. So if you did like it, feel free to share. And if you're doing any shopping, you can go through our Amazon link on our website, quackspodcast.com. That'll help us out. You don't pay for anything. You just buy stuff on Amazon and we get a little piece. So anything else?
Sounds great, man.
Sweet. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Be well.